You ever sit in a cafe scrolling through your phone, hoping for a message that never comes? Not because you're desperate, not because you're stuck in the past, but because deep down, you know someone out there is still thinking about you. And they're silent, not because they don't care, but because their pride is louder than their heart. This video isn't about chasing anyone. It's not about texting first or playing games to win them back. It's about something deeper. About standing still when your soul wants to run. About letting the silence speak, not as surrender but as strength. Because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is not reach out. Stay with this video. If you've ever felt that pull, the one that whispers, maybe she still thinks of me, this message is for you. Part 1. The battle between heart and pride. One late autumn afternoon in Portland, Oregon, when the sky hung low like a heavy grey blanket, Anna, a woman in her 30s, successful, living independently, sat in her third-floor apartment, holding a cup of hot tea, eyes fixed on her phone. A message, "Hey, how have you been?" A simple line, not overly emotional, not overly inviting. But that very line, after a few seconds of appearing, was deleted, leaving no trace but hesitation. This wasn't the first time. It was the 7th time in 2 weeks. Each time she would tell herself, "No, I shouldn't." She wasn't the type to be weak-hearted. She had left for a good reason. She kept reminding herself, if he really wanted to, he would be the one to reach out. And so she stayed silent, even though her heart didn't. But you, the one reading this, you don't see that battle. All you feel is emptiness. You don't know that somewhere out there, someone still remembers your laughter, still remembers the last time you two shared dinner at a riverside restaurant, still remembers the way you looked, saying nothing but fully present. All of that for her hasn't vanished. It's just buried under a shell called pride. Why doesn't she text? Not because she doesn't want to, but because she's afraid you won't respond, afraid you'll think she's weak. Afraid that reaching out would make her the loser in an invisible emotional game. And the saddest part is, she doesn't know you're thinking of her too. But no one says anything. Both sides remain silent. One side because of pride, the other because of dignity. But this is not your battle. She's fighting her own internal war, between longing and fear, between missing you and self-protection. And you? You were not born to heal someone else's battle by sacrificing your own peace. You are not tasked with reading vague signals. You don't need to decode cryptic status updates. You don't need to pretend to be strong just to prove you're okay. Your job is to stay loyal to yourself, the philosophy of calmness. A man who knows his worth never fights to be seen. He doesn't shout to be loved. He doesn't cling to broken memories like a lost bird. He stands firm like a cliff amidst the winds of nostalgia and uncertainty, because he knows some doors, if opened too hastily, only lead to dead ends. You cannot force someone to love you when they love their own pride more. You cannot save a love that the other person is too afraid to face. And you cannot chase after a heart that is not yet ready to be honest. The only thing you can do is become such a better version of yourself that if they ever come back, they must bow their heads in regret for ever leaving. She might still think of you every day. She might write a message and then delete it. She might miss you, yet choose silence. But that doesn't mean you have to run toward her. You are not the one knocking on closed gates just to be met with silence. You are the one who builds such a brilliant life that if someone misses out, it is their loss to mourn. Part 2. She's watching you, but will never say it. In today's world of silent connections, social media is a two-way mirror. One side reflects your life. The other is a pair of eyes silently observing from the other side of the screen. In Chicago, there's a man named Mason, 34 years old, a fitness coach and entrepreneur. After a breakup that dragged on in silence, he had stopped searching for her. No messages, no calls, no posts aimed at anyone. But what Mason didn't know was that every night around 11 p.m., Emily still checked his Instagram. No likes, no comments, just quietly scrolling through each photo. She read every caption as if searching for a hidden meaning, as if hoping that some line was whispering, "I'm still thinking of you." But no such line existed. Only photos of work, of teaching sessions, of peaceful moments with a cup of coffee and the sunrise. Each tiny detail troubled her more than any love confession ever could. She doesn't touch, but she still follows. She might not interact. She might leave no visible trace. But don't mistake that for indifference. The truth is, many women will follow you in silence because they don't have the courage to knock again. They view your photos, your stories, scroll through your statuses, but they don't want you to know. Because if you knew, you would regain the upper hand. And pride does not allow that. The mistake men make is responding. Many men, upon realizing someone is silently watching, start playing the game of vague signaling, posting deep quotes like, "If you miss someone, tell them," sharing an old song as a hint, or posting romantic images just so she might see. That is the trap. You're playing by emotional rules, in a game where the other player never even stated their intent, and that makes you lose yourself. A Stoic man does not post so someone will secretly understand. He doesn't use social media as a rescue signal board. He lives in the truest sense for himself, a philosophical perspective. Are you living or performing? A question that seems simple, yet forms the foundation of inner freedom. Because if you post photos for her to see, update statuses to jolt someone, or share songs to revive old memories, you are not living honestly, but seeking attention. And in any unspoken relationship, when you're the one trying to be seen, you've already lost. Become the man who doesn't need to prove anything. A man who lives with purpose doesn't need to declare, "I've moved on from you." He doesn't need anyone to know he's doing well. He doesn't need anyone's praise for being strong. He knows he's building something truly worthwhile. That's when your absence no longer becomes an empty space, but a symbol of maturity, a symbol of someone who chose a path of no return, no rescue signals, no living to be misunderstood. If she truly wants to know how you're living, she will have to step out of the shadow of pride. And you only need to keep living true to yourself. Silence is not rejection. Sometimes silence is the strongest voice of a man who once chose to love deeply, but never chose to beg. Part 3. The silent signs she leaves behind. She doesn't text. She doesn't call. She doesn't check in. But still, there's something you can feel. She's still thinking of you. It's a song on her story. It's a fleeting quote on Facebook. It's her suddenly showing up at the cafe you both used to visit, even though you know she no longer lives nearby. Story, the traces of those who never really left. In Austin, Texas, there's a man named Dylan. He had just moved to live alone after a breakup that lasted almost 2 years. Even though they no longer had contact, one day he noticed his ex, Claire, had shared an old song they used to listen to during road trips. No tag, no caption. Just there. 3 days later, a mutual friend casually mentioned, "Claire asked if you're doing okay lately, but said it was just a random thought, nothing serious." A few weeks later, Dylan went to the cafe where they used to have Sunday mornings together. Claire was there too. Alone, she gave a small nod, then walked out, without saying a word. You see, even without direct words, people leave traces, not because they want to come back right away, but because they haven't been able to fully leave yet. But be careful, don't confuse signs with intent. She might post a status like, "Some memories never fade." Share a song whose lyrics only the two of you would understand. Send a message asking about you indirectly through friends. Suddenly pass through your life like a strange breeze on an old afternoon, and then disappear. That is not an invitation. Those are remnants of emotions trying to comfort themselves. And if you mistake it for an opening, you'll walk into a chess game she herself isn't ready to play. A philosophical perspective. Don't confuse signals with commitment. Someone might shed a tear, not because they want you to wipe it away. They just need to know they're still remembered. A wise man will view those signs with a clear mind, not a hungry heart. What would a Stoic man do? He doesn't chase after emotional breadcrumbs. He doesn't analyze every story post. He doesn't ask friends, "Did she really ask about me?" He simply observes and then returns to his own path, because he understands if she truly wants to come back, she will come, not through signs, but through her presence. Be a rock, not a fallen leaf. You are not a leaf swayed by someone else's emotional winds. You are a rock, unmoved by half-hearted signals. Because if you let your heart flutter at every faint knock, you will spend your life living on fragile hope, not on clear responsibility. Let her hold on to those blurry signals. You live clearly, solidly, and with direction. A memorable man is not the one who reacts quickly, but the one who stays firm when everything around him starts to tremble. Part 4, the emotional game, when she's hot and cold. Perhaps nothing confuses a man more than being pulled into the emotional game of a woman who isn't ready. Today she likes 5 of your photos in a row. Tomorrow she's silent as if she never knew you. One day she sends a vague message. Heard this song, reminded me of someone, then vanishes. You don't understand what's happening. You think she's opening the door, but in truth she's just testing the lock. Story. The phone rings, then goes silent. In the state of Minnesota, during winter, snow falls thick and people only go outside when absolutely necessary. Josh, a freelance photographer, was editing photos when he got a message from Megan, his ex. "It's so cold today. I remember how you used to make me wear an extra jacket." He stared at the message. A strange feeling rose in his chest. Then he replied, "I remember that day too." No response. 1 day, 3 days, a week. That message wasn't meant to restart anything. It was just a fleeting moment of weakness with no responsibility attached. Don't let short-lived warmth fool you. She's not being intentionally cruel, but she's struggling between pride and the desire to be loved. When emotion rises, she reaches out. When pride awakens, she pulls back. You are not the one leading this game. You're just the place she tests whether she still has an effect. Philosophical perspective, how not to be swept away. There is one principle in inner life. Truth doesn't come from moments of weakness, but from what people do after they've thought things through. And you can't build a lasting relationship on emotional waves. The woman who's warm today may not be the one who can hold you through the winter of life. The one who sends a message of longing may not be the one who stays when pain arrives. Be the one who doesn't get swayed. When she suddenly gets close, you don't need to react too fast. When she goes silent, you don't need to panic. You're not a small boat drifting with each wave. You're a harbor where only those who truly want to anchor dare to approach. This is when you test your own strength. A Stoic man is not cold-hearted. He feels, but he doesn't get carried away. He doesn't rush to react to an old like. Doesn't get flustered by a vague quote. Doesn't try to decode every time she accidentally shows up. Instead, he keeps living, focused, steady, because he understands. His silence is not a wall, but a mirror. If she looks into it and still doesn't dare come closer, that's not the mirror's fault. Be honest with yourself, because nothing is weaker than lying to yourself just to hold on to something temporary. When she's near one moment and distant the next, be the one who stays still, neither angry nor excited. Stability doesn't come from a heart that never stirs, but from one that is no longer controlled. True attraction doesn't lie in words. but in quiet steadiness amid the noisy game of emotions. Part 5. When memories return and become undeniable. Memory is a strange thing. It doesn't need an invitation. It doesn't knock. It simply walks in just when you thought you had forgotten. Story, the old box, and a familiar scent. In a small house in the suburbs of Seattle, Amanda was cleaning out a storage room, the one she had meant to clean 8 months ago, right after the breakup. Among the books, winter sweaters and Christmas decorations, she found an old grey hoodie, the one he wore when he took her home after their first movie date. She picked it up, hesitated. Then she smelled it, and in an instant, everything she had tried to forget came flooding back. His smile as he quietly poured her tea, that hug from behind on a chilly evening, his soft guitar playing on Friday nights. Things she thought had been locked away in a drawer labeled past. But now, that drawer had swung wide open, and nothing could stop the memories from pouring in. The subtle power of memory. Memory doesn't ask if you're okay. It doesn't care who you're loving now. It just comes back, right when you feel the loneliest or the most at peace. And in that moment, you're no longer sure if you've truly moved on or just pretended to forget. She feels it too. She once believed leaving was the right thing. She once told her friends, "I'm okay. I'm stronger now." But an old song, a scent, a message accidentally reopened, and everything trembles again. But the truth is, memory is not a sign to go back. It's just the heart's reflex when remembering something once sincere. She might truly miss you, but that doesn't mean she's changed. It doesn't mean she's ready. And it certainly doesn't mean you should go back. A mature man looks at memory not to return, but to understand himself better. You can remember without being pulled back. You can cherish without needing to hold on. You can smile at what was once beautiful without trying to make it live again. Memory, when accepted properly, becomes a lesson. But if you try to resurrect it, it becomes a trap. Philosophical perspective. An immature man will think, if she still remembers, he still has a chance. A mature man understands, if she still remembers, it means something beautiful once existed. And the most beautiful thing, sometimes, is to let it stay that way. Don't trade the present just to hold on to a memory. You've moved on, not to prove your strength, but because you deserve clarity, love that doesn't come from regret, but from conscious choice. Don't live in what if. Live in what's next. If she's thinking of you, if she's hesitating over her phone with an unsent message, let her sit with that. Don't break the silence with a rushed reaction. You don't belong to what has passed. You belong to the person you are becoming. We are not who we are in someone else's memory, but who we are in our own silence. And if she truly wants to step out of the memory, she'll have to walk forward on her own 2 feet. Part 6. When she truly starts missing you. Missing is not the same as reminiscing. Reminiscing is rewatching an old scene. But missing is when that scene plays over and over in your mind, and you can't turn it off. Story, an old laugh in a new crowd. In San Diego on a weekend night, Haley went out to a bar with friends. Loud music, flashing lights, a cocktail in hand. Everything matched the "I'm fine now" image she'd been sharing with her friends. But then a friend told a joke, one that only she and he would have understood. Everyone laughed. Haley laughed too, but only she felt the sting, because that laugh once used to sit beside her every night. Because the one who used to lightly touch her back in a crowd was no longer there to see her smile. She didn't show anything. She just went home, opened their old conversation thread, and paused at the line. "If we ever part ways, I hope you'll still keep that smile." Tears fell, silently. Missing isn't because she hasn't forgotten. but because she lost something hard to find again. She once tried to forget you by packing her schedule, changing her music taste, deleting photos. She once thought, with enough time, the heart would stop reminding her. But there's a kind of emptiness that nothing else can fill, because it's not about time, it's about the depth of connection. And when your silence continues, it's no longer just a pause. It becomes a mirror clearly showing her what she has lost. This is when she faces a hard truth. And that you no longer send little signals. That you no longer try to show her if you're okay or not. That you are no longer there to be found. Each passing day, instead of making her forget, makes her wonder more. Did I lose something no one else will ever give me again? But you must be the one who doesn't fall to her hesitation. Many men fail at exactly this moment. They sense the missing signals and they fall. They text, they reach out. They reopen the door, even though that door was never knocked on with sincerity. They trade their calm for another question mark. The philosophy of the unshakable man. You do not live to be someone reconsidered. You live to be a clear, steady and worthy man, even when no one's watching. If she truly misses, if she truly regrets, if she truly wants to come back, then she will break the silence, not through hints, but through courage. When she truly starts to miss you, you don't need to rush toward her. Let that longing run its full course, to its very end. Because if that love is real, it will find its way back. And if not, you've lost nothing, except someone who wasn't brave enough to keep something precious. A strong man is not the one who gets pulled back. He is the one who walks forward without needing to cling and still keeps his heart whole. Part 7. Holding your ground in moments of doubt. There are nights, even when you're rational, even when you've come so far. Just one old song playing, one photo sliding through your feed, or one long stretch of silence can make you want to throw it all away and send a message just to ask, "Do you ever think of me?" That's when you must fight, not with her, but with yourself. Story: the call that was never made. Brandon, an engineer living in Denver, had just finished his evening run. Sweat still on his forehead, he sat in his car and turned on an old playlist. The song "I Won't Give Up" by Jason Mraz came on. Immediately her image rushed in. He tapped her name in his contacts. His finger hovered over the call button. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. He turned off the screen, didn't call, not because he didn't miss her, but because he knew missing her is not a good enough reason to break the calm he had built. Real strength, restraint, not reaching out. Some say, a strong man is someone who dares to love without fear of being hurt. But there is another strength, quieter and more enduring. It's being clear-headed enough not to trade inner peace for a moment of emotional weakness. You might miss her deeply. You might crave reassurance, a tiny sign that you still matter. But if you text just to soothe the doubt inside you, you're handing over all your power to someone who isn't even present. Philosophical perspective. Self-mastery is the peak of freedom. Epictetus once said, "Nothing outside yourself can cause you suffering." When you feel anxious, doubtful, or empty, the problem isn't her. The problem is how you respond to that emptiness. A truly mature man doesn't deal with loneliness by seeking to be filled by someone else. He sits with himself, watches the emotional wave pass, like a sailor navigating a storm without throwing the helm. You don't need to call, you need to continue. Anytime you feel the urge to text, call, or react out of doubt, ask yourself, am I acting from my values or from fear of being forgotten? If I send this message, am I showing strength or asking for comfort? The answer becomes clear if you're honest with yourself. Act from values, not from emotion. If you truly want to reach out, do it when you are calm, clear, and expect nothing in return. But if you want to send a message just because your heart is racing and your head is full of questions, stop. Because you're not really loving, you're panicking. A strong man is not one without doubts, but one who doesn't let doubt dictate his actions. He understands that sometimes real strength is doing nothing at all. It is holding the silence. It is trusting in the value he's building, even when no one sees it. The moment you most want to send a message is the moment you most need to stay silent. Because that silence doesn't just preserve your dignity, it protects the strongest version of who you are. Part 8. Should you be the one to reach out first? This is the question that keeps many men up at night. If I text first, is that wrong? What if she's waiting for me to do it? You look back at the old conversation. You think about the good memories. You feel like you're strong enough to let go of your pride, to take initiative for the sake of real feelings. But there's one truth you need to face. Love isn't measured by who texts first, but by the reason behind the action. Story: texting out of missing or out of breakdown. Kevin, a graphic designer in Los Angeles, once wrote a message to send to his ex after 3 months of no contact. He typed, "I hope you're doing well. Though things aren't the same anymore, I truly cherish it all." He planned to send it on a weekend, after the end of an exhibition he'd been preparing for all summer. But that night, when he got home, lying alone in his empty apartment, the silence felt too heavy. He picked up his phone, ready to send. But then he paused and asked himself, am I texting because I genuinely want to reconnect, or because I'm feeling weak? He chose not to send it. And the next day, when he felt clearer, he deleted the draft completely. The philosophy of clarity: don't act from fear. If you text just to ease the uncertainty, just to confirm you still matter, you're trading your inner strength for a fragile reaction. A wise man doesn't act based on fleeting emotions. He acts based on values, principles, and clarity. When should you reach out? Only when you can answer yes to these 3. 1. I'm sending this not to be acknowledged, but to bring clarity. 2. I can accept any response, even indifference, without losing self-respect. 3. I will not wait for an outcome, because I'm not sending to receive, I'm sending to complete something unresolved. If not, don't do it. Send from strength, not from anxiety. A message sent from lack is not a bridge back to love. It's a noose tightening around your self-worth. You don't need to do anything, if the only reason is that you feel empty. Silence, in moments of weakness, is a quiet but profound victory. Philosophical perspective. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like a rock against which the waves crash, and it stands firm." You can't control how she responds, but you can control why you act. And that is where true power begins. Remember, not every action deserves to be taken just because you can take it. True strength is when you choose to hold on to silence, not out of pride, but because you don't want to break the peace you fought so hard to build. If she truly wants to, she will step forward. And you, stay grounded in your calm, not texting to pull back someone who chose to walk away without clarity. Part 9. When her pride finally breaks down. Pride is the wall she built to protect her heart. But one day that wall will no longer hold against unhealed memories, unanswered questions, and a longing that keeps growing. Story: a light text, heavy with meaning. In Brooklyn, New York, Ethan was working when his phone buzzed. A message appeared from a name he no longer expected. "I just found your old sweater in my stuff. Do you want it back?" No question mark, no emoji, no clear intent. He looked at the message, not with a racing heart, but with calm maturity. He knew that message wasn't really about the sweater. It was her way of knocking on the door, without enough courage to say she wanted to come back. The breakdown of pride is never loud. When pride breaks, it makes no sound. It shows up as a casual check-in, a like on an old photo, a message that seems random. She won't say, "I miss you. I was wrong. I want us back." Instead, she tries, softly, cautiously, indirectly. Because if you don't respond, she can still pretend she meant nothing by it. How does a Stoic man respond? He doesn't need to be harsh. He doesn't need to force a "I've moved on" performance. He just needs to stay calm, composed and clear. No judgment, no sarcasm, no arrogance about an ex coming back. Because real confidence doesn't need a show, and real forgiveness doesn't need a declaration. Not everyone who returns deserves a welcome. Sometimes she comes back not because you're the best man, but because the world out there isn't as gentle as she imagined. She didn't return for love. She returned for the void. And this is where you must discern. Is she coming back for you, or coming back for her own loneliness? Philosophical perspective. Seneca once said, "Do not assume someone's return is proof of change. Watch how they change." True remorse doesn't wear a disguise. True growth doesn't need long apologies. It shows in action, in how they take responsibility to rebuild what they once let fall apart. You don't need to win, you just need to stand firm. If you choose to welcome her, do it with maturity, without illusion. If you choose silence, do it with certainty, not resentment. Whatever you choose, remember, your worth doesn't change whether someone walks away or walks back. The breakdown of pride is a critical moment. Not for you to win, but for you to see how far you've really grown. If someone comes back, you don't need to erase the past, but you also don't need to repeat it. Look at them through the eyes of someone who's gone farther, higher and deeper. Part 10. Personal growth is where you truly win. People often think victory is when someone comes back, but a truly mature man will understand. Victory isn't when she returns, it's when you've stopped waiting. Story. No longer the same man. In the city of Atlanta, Jordan, was once a man who lived in the past. He tortured himself, missed her, and kept hoping for a message from his ex. But one day he got tired of checking his phone every morning. He decided to change his habits. He signed up for a boxing class. I got a haircut. Vedke wrote down 10 things he wanted to do before turning 35, none of which involved her. A year later, he ran into her at a conference. She smiled and said, "You've changed. You're not the man I used to know." And he simply nodded gently, "Because I no longer live in the place you walked away from." Victory is a quiet process. No noise. No need to prove anything. You just take one step each day toward the man you're capable of becoming. From an overthinker to someone who filters his thoughts. From someone who lives by others' emotions to someone with an inner compass. From someone who was left behind to someone who is admired. Philosophical perspective. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can begin again whenever you choose. Mastery of self is the highest power." She may never return, or she may return at the very moment you no longer feel the need. And that is not revenge. That is transformation. A man is not defined by who stays or who leaves. You are not someone who only has value when others approve. You are someone of value, even in silence, in the shadows and without applause. She comes back? Fine. She doesn't? Also fine. Because in the end, what you're building isn't an old relationship, but a new resilience. Real victory requires no witnesses. You don't need someone to turn back for you to feel worthy. You don't need an apology to feel restored. You just need to look in the mirror and know, I'm no longer the fragile man who once waited for a message. That is victory. No flowers, no soundtrack, just peace. That's very real. If there's one thing you should remember after all this, it's this. She might think of you every day, but what matters is, are you thinking of yourself every day? Your silence is not avoidance. It's a declaration. I choose growth over reaction. I choose peace over letting others define me. You don't need to be chosen again. You just need to choose yourself. Thank you for joining Daily Stoic, Strong Mindset, wishing you peace and mastery over yourself. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Daily Stoic, Strong Mindset channel to stay updated with more meaningful life lessons. See you in the next video.